All right. That seriously took like 10 seconds to go live. So, welcome everybody. As always, we are just going to wait until everybody sort of files in before we start getting into the brass tacks of it. Hello to AMK Mapping in New Zealand. If you guys don't follow AMK Mapping, be sure to go over and give him a follow on his Telegram and Twitter. Let's see. Welcome, Brit in Bulgaria. Nice. It's kind of confusing. New Orleans, California, Chile, Belgium. Good day or good night to you guys as well. Hello from Sweden. Nice. Nice. It's good to see people in here from all over. Again, we are just waiting for everything to get settled, and then I'm going to retweet my live stream and we will get started here. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Sorry. And all right, let's get into it, huh? All right. How is everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Hello from the Republic of Texas. That is wild. Still in Miami. Awesome. All right, guys, let's get into it. As you can tell, the title of today's live stream is, of course, War is Inevitable. I think we all know what I'm referring to, but if you don't, there have been a series of escalatory strikes, assassinations, really, by Israel against Hezbollah and Hamas, striking the territory of Iran. So some pretty escalatory moves there. Just basically as escalatory, if not more escalatory, than the strikes on the Iranian embassy in Syria. It feels like war is inevitable now. It looks like Israel is gearing up for war. It looks like Israel wants war, and it does not look like Iran or Hezbollah will back down. So that is definitely going on. And on the Ukrainian front, a little bit slower, but actually very, very intense. We have a lot of Russian progress over the last 48 hours since my last live stream, which we're going to jump into here. We got a lot to talk about. F-16s are now present in Ukraine, so we are also going to be talking about that. I was undecided whether I wanted to title this something F-16s in Ukraine, blah, 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 or war is inevitable for the situation in the Middle East. I went with the Middle East because I feel like that is a slightly more pressing issue than some F-16s, which we have seen have gone from game changers to battlefield shapers to now air defense over Lvov for drones and missiles, sharing AIM-120s with NASM air defense on the ground. So, not as impactful, not as exciting, but still something happening in Ukraine. All right, guys. Before we get into all of the new map updates, please go follow me on Twitter and Telegram. You can find those links in the YouTube description. If you are on my Twitter, you can find those links in my profile. Go check out my map, guys. And if you wish to support me, the easiest way you can do that is by heading over to my Patreon. You can join as a free member, or you can sign up for one of the tiers. If you sign up for the first tier, you do get access to my demonetized series early. This series is a series where I cover combat footage and stuff like that I can't show on YouTube because it will get demonetized. All right, guys, thank you so much. Please also like and subscribe and turn on that little notification bell if you are so accustomed to do so. Okay, let's get into it. Hey, from Toronto, what's up? What's going on in Toronto? All right, heading over to the map, we have a few updates to say the least. Let's see. Let's make me smaller over here. And let's get right into it. Okay, so starting in the south this time, because we started in the north yesterday. Again, this is the area that I'm telling you guys to pay very close attention to. I think that the Russians are very keen on capturing Vadyana, Ugledar, and really disrupting the bottom part of the front line here along the Donetsk Oblast. And the reason to do so is because, first off, the Ukrainian units in this area are quite weak. in terms of available reserves, equipment, and the amount of time that the brigades have individually been in the. Oh no! What happened to my mouse? Oh, well, it was yellow the other day, and now it's not. Okay, that's fine. Let's go. Oh well. Okay, so down here, we'll just talk about the actual advances. Remember, the 0532 is the important road here. It's significant. The Ukrainians want to try to hold this at all costs. They do have defensive fortifications set up along the road down here. And this one is older. They have more that you will not see on this satellite mapping. But remember that this is sort of a defensive line. The Ukrainians do not want to lose this. Giving the Russians access to this road will greatly reduce logistics to this southern front here, where they don't have to run it down, behind Donetsk and then run it up the road. They'll be able to deliver ammunition and manpower and everything down the 0532 for continued assaults in the direction of, Pokrovsk up to the north, technically, but more than likely Kharkov here. This should be the major objective for the Russians in this southern direction, as it is like the staging area for almost all of these small towns all over the place. Okay. Here in Konstantinivka, we have a small Russian advance, nothing much, just a geolocation that shows that the Russians are a little deeper in the actual urban area of Konstantinivka. Remember, this is the 0532. This is the Russian goal right here, is to capture the center of this town. Once that happens, the Russian logistics situation and just ease of movement on this front opens wide up. So very, very close to triggering what I consider the main condition for starting a larger offensive in the direction of Vuhledar, Vadyane, and then up into these other towns. All right, just south of Pabyeta, the Russians have advanced along the 0532, capturing a small chunk of territory that has kind of been in the gray zone for a long time. Not so much up here. This was actually a pretty strong Ukrainian position, but down here more or less was in the gray zone. Okay, moving up to the Orshitny salient here. Okay, so south of Vovoche, the Russians have advanced into these tree lines, captured this entire tree line. According to Deep State, the large fortification in this area was captured by the Russians. So now is when we're going to start to see a lot more progress south along the Vovoche River, and just one by one knock out these small settlements, boink, 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 but more importantly, knock out the large fortification areas here that the Ukrainians will enjoy for a strong defense across the river. You can see there are multiple of them. This is the goal. If the Russians can, as they've already done, as they're showing right here, if they can get behind the Ukrainian defensive lines, they will be able to just undo all of the prepared, lines here that the Ukrainians are really relying on to slow down the Russian advance towards Seldove. Again, the Russians are getting very close to some pretty major urban centers. Seldove, Hordivka here, which is not as industrial, so a little bit smaller, small population, but it covers a bigger area. And then from there, they're still on the road to Mihrad and then to Pokrovsk. So the Russians are making an immense amount of progress, and the Ukrainians have not been able to stabilize in any sense of the word. Okay, just to the north, the Russians have progressed along these tree lines outside of Vesele and are now have leveled out the front right here towards Ivanivka. Again, these are just some small advances. It's not huge, but what it shows is that the Ukrainians continuously are not able to stabilize, and the Russians are continuously expanding. Not only the spearhead of this, this penetration here, it's getting wider, which means that the Ukrainians are not going to be able to force it back. But it also means that the operating space in this area for the Russians is growing. And as the operating space opens up, the ease of operations will allow the Russians to expand out of this zone much, much quicker. So This is going to hit a critical mass pretty soon, and as soon as it does, you're going to see massive progress to the south. This entire salient is likely going to just collapse. Okay. This is just another small update along the Kazeni River, Kazeni Torets River here, or creek, or whatever you want to call it. This advance is not as large. It captures a small settlement, but rather unimportant, almost no housing or anything. The reason why this is so important is because it means that the Russians now are on one of the only paved roads, you can see here, car traveling on it, that will lead to the ring road up here. And this is on the 0504, which goes from Pokrovsk, Mihrad to Konstantinivka. Cutting this is a major achievement for the Russian offensive in this direction. And as I have shown for my presentation, the Russians are having a lot more success south than where I had previously thought they were going to focus up north. But they do continue to push out in the direction of this ring road here. Okay, moving over to the New York salient. So the Russians have made an advance through these tree lines, according to Deep State, have reached this tree line right here, and according to Syriac, have pushed out even further. This is just the next step in the Battle of New York and Toretsk. The Russians are going to continuously expand this flank, try to level this out, and bring this entire front right here up to a position where it begins to form a flank on Toretsk as well as Konstantinivka. We will see up in the north the same thing is currently happening. But these moves are just, again, probably shouldn't be happening, but the Russians are just enjoying a much more liquid front line now than they were, even 4 or 5 months ago. They're able to move around. Their reserve numbers are much stronger than the Ukrainians, so forced disposition is now likely in Russian favor almost everywhere, besides maybe Kharkov region, and maybe some individual areas on the map. But overall, the Russians have the number superiority now. Okay, moving up here, the Russians have advanced along the Kryvyi Torets River here, and have just sort of leveled out the front along one of the main roads into New York. And captured some of these industrial warehouses right here. Not a huge advance, but again, putting a lot of pressure into the heart of New York. And now the Russians should be soon launching assault operations into this industrial zone. Once this industrial zone falls, New York falls. Okay, moving down here to the south. If you guys remember, I believe... I have this blue line here to show the Russian advance. I'm sorry, the Ukrainian defense line in the region. This Russian advance is now putting the Ukrainian defense line in extreme jeopardy. It's going to be very hard for the Ukrainians to now hold this. I made a post about this, but if you look here, you can see that the distance between the two, edges of the flanks of the salient are around 2 miles. But if you look closely, the actual ground here is not very, retreat friendly. A lot of large bodies of water, very, very cramped, narrow evacuation routes. And the Russians, most of this is in the gray zone now. So the Russians are probably at the edge of this, looking out over these fields with their rifles and with their FPV drones and stuff like that. So the Ukrainians in this area could very well be trapped now. We just don't know. Not a lot of information comes out of this little area. Okay, moving up here into Zelizny. The Russians have been geolocated on this side of the industrial waste heap in these houses right here, and have also been geolocated into this section of houses right here, which means that the Russians have crossed the railroad, which is sort of a physical barrier, but the Russians are moving so fast now, it's not quite as important. Wait, is this a railroad? Yeah, it's a little railroad. So yeah, the Russians have crossed it, and they are going to start putting a lot of pressure on this industrial mound here. Guys, remember that this industrial mound and this one right here they're adjacent to each other or parallel to each other, maybe. And once these two hills are taken, the Russian ability to project into Toretsk is going to be multiplied significantly. So these two hills are the current objectives. Once these are taken, the Battle of Toretsk should begin. Okay. All right, moving over here to the Chasiv Yar front. The Russian advance across the river has been confirmed. So the Russians did achieve a foothold. I had told you that potentially there was a situation where the Russians would not be achieving a foothold in the actual across the river, just because across the canal, because it is very difficult to hold bridgeheads across any body of water. Logistics is more difficult, especially if you have an enemy that is in a position to actually defend. But the Ukrainians do not seem to be. This is a vital area that the Ukrainians have just had a major slip up on, and now the Russians have a very solid foothold across the canal. Operations directly into Chasiv Yar are going to begin, and if you get out, a ruler, we can see that the Russians are less than about a mile away from the industrial zone in Chasiv Yar, which is the heart of Chasiv Yar. It is the main staging area in Chasiv Yar, and the Russians are already knocking on the door. So really not good. And if you zoom out, you can start to kind of see what the Ukrainians are really dealing with. So you have a very weak front down here with the Russians applying pressure. You have a very weak front here, which is not a good sign, because there are a lot of qualified Ukrainian brigades in this region that should be holding, like the 47th, but they've been so heavily attrited that they just can't anymore. So the Russians are progressing very fast still out of Avdiivka, and are now, they are getting very close to Mihrad, which I consider just basically Pokrovsk. Yep, 6 miles. So very close to the city. This is a key logistics town. This combination of towns right here is a key logistics area, and the Russians are about to disrupt the logistics to the entire southern flank of the Ukrainian front line. But you can see right here, we got pressure down in the south towards Ugledar. We got pressure towards Pokrovsk. We have pressure in the New York Toretsk salient, and we have pressure in Chasiv Yar. Not only that, there is also significant pressure up here in Kupiansk. So the Ukrainians are dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fires that they're trying to put out, while also conducting offensive operations in the Volochansk region. And now there are rumors that the Ukrainians are going to try to make a move on Ernagodar in a last-ditch effort to secure probably some capital before the Ukrainians try to come to the negotiating table. I think everybody's kind of waiting to see how the election goes. If it's Kamala, I don't know if the Ukrainians are going to come to the table. If it's Trump, I think the Ukrainians are going to come to the table. And this is going to be their last-ditch effort to try to secure something worth some value that could potentially be traded back in lieu for less concessions on their end. We'll give you Ernagodar if you provide X for Ukraine in some sort of security guarantee or something like that. Who knows? Who knows? All right, that's all my updates for today, guys. A lot of updates. Kind of covered them quick because they're mostly just empty fields that are being captured right now. But just bad news. Like, seeing this was all, I did all of this just today. All of these updates came just from today. So the Russians are moving here, and I expect within the next couple of days, you're going to see this entire area change. I think the Russians are going to push into Ivanivka. They're going to reach Lishiny. And then they're going to push down this river, because I don't think the Ukrainians have very strong defenses here anymore. And they're probably going to reach Severodonivka, which is crazy. That's a crazy town name. But I'm thinking that this entire pocket is going to open up, and then this entire flank and spearhead is going to look very menacing into the Ukrainian rear positions here. Okay. If you guys have some questions, go ahead and get some questions up. I don't have as much to go over today, but I am going to talk about the situation in Israel and Palestine and the Middle East. Guys, again, I'm not an expert on the Middle East. I have some very I know enough to talk about it. I know enough to understand what is happening in the region. But again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert, so don't take this as, I would say my Ukraine stuff. I know pretty well. I'm a decent resource for Ukraine knowledge. Middle East, this is just going to be my opinion. And if you disagree, that's awesome. I'm sure half of you are going to vehemently disagree with what I'm going to say. Actually, probably 100% of you, because I'm so middle ground on everything, and I call bullshit when I see it, that people usually get super emotional and upset about this. Try to keep it to yourself. I get it. I'm an idiot. You're an idiot. We're all idiots. So the situation here is developing rapidly. Earlier, we saw yesterday, we saw a strike from Israel, from the IDF, on a Hezbollah leader, a leader of the Hezbollah group in Beirut, which is an immediate escalation just because they're striking Beirut. That's a big deal. Also eliminating a senior commander of Hezbollah, big deal. An obvious escalation. It was supposedly in response to the strike on the soccer field that killed some Syrian Christian children. But that was just a casus belli for Israel to begin the war. I mean, even if it was Hezbollah has been firing missiles into Israel nonstop and inflicting very, very little civilian casualties. Of all of the groups, Hezbollah seems to be like one of the more professional and realistic groups. They always announce when people die. They don't hide it. They're like a very professional organization, at least on their social media and stuff like that. So they follow like the political aspect more than just the jihad, and they are part of the Iranian sphere of influence. It's not just some like terror group or whatever. If you don't know what Hezbollah is, they're a very powerful, very strong organization, considering what they are and where they are in Lebanon. So that strike took out a senior Hezbollah commander. Also there was like 60 other civilian casualties, so a high civilian casualty count on that strike. But the Israelis don't care. They feel that justified the strike, and this is already enough to trigger a war. This was a clear escalation, completely what I would consider not unwarranted, but considering the temperature and the weather in the Middle East right now, probably not the smartest move to go ahead and start striking them. Leadership, if you don't want a war, so it looks very clear that Israel either thinks that they're already in a war, it's inevitable, they're going to be in a war, or they actually want a war. And to me, it looks like they want the war. After this strike, about 12 hours later, maybe 10 hours later, another strike was conducted by Israel, this time in Tehran, which where is Tehran? I haven't looked at this map very much. Got to zoom out so I can see it. Oh, Tehran right there. So Israel conducted another strike into Tehran, where they eliminated the political head of Hamas, which has multiple implications. First off, this is a member of a key member of the negotiations, which basically means that there are no more negotiations with Hamas. I don't think that there ever were. Neither side was really looking for that at all. But now it's very clear that that's not going to happen. Israel looks like that they have they're conducting heavy assassination or decapitation strikes before the onset of a regional war. I think the U.S. basically gave Israel the green light to start an operation in southern Lebanon, and I do believe the response from Iran and Hezbollah is going to be crippling for Israel. I do as it's titled, this war is inevitable at this point. Neither side is going to back down. It would be the end of either regime if either side backed down, sort of the same thing we have in Ukraine. Nobody can back down. The geostrategic implications are too great for the United States and Israel. For Israel, it's about their state survival, in their opinion. I don't necessarily think that because they have nukes. So that is what that is. But, and for Iran, it is it's their decision now whether they think that they're ready to take on the Israeli giant in the Middle East. We'll see how the strikes come out. I'm going to talk about the strikes in just a second, but I think a lot of people were very confused by the strikes last time. That the April strikes, the one where the Hezbollah, I believe it was Hezbollah leadership was struck in at the embassy in Syria. That strike, which included somewhere near 100 missiles of different types, I believe, and a few hundred drones or something in that range. I can't exactly remember. That whole strike was just a demonstration. So their goal there, they had multiple goals, in my personal opinion. Iran was, first off, trying to see what Israel's red lines were in terms of going to war. Iran got away with conducting successful strikes against Israel, against an airbase in Israel, and a war did not immediately occur after that. So Iran figures out how far they can go without, going into a regional war. They also figure out who's going to come to the aid of Israel if a direct attack comes from Iran. We know that Jordan came to their aid. I don't know if Saudi Arabia did. I don't think Saudi Arabia did. But we had multiple NATO assets in the region also assisting in air defense, as well as Israel's pretty strong air defense network as is. So the Iranians have figured out how the Israelis are planning to respond to an Iranian attack. Obviously, it's going to change. Obviously, it's going to be updated, but so is the Iranian attack method, right? So it's part of it was figuring out where everything lies. It was really just a feelers, and it's a very, very impactful statement that Iran directly struck an Israeli base, and a war did not immediately proceed. Iran didn't get nuked, so it kind of it reduces the idea of this like nuclear deterrence. Like Israel is willing to take some damage and not use tactical nuclear weapons or nuclear weapons on the battlefield, at least so far as we've seen. Now, with this next strike that's coming, I do believe that if significant damage is done to Israel, tactical nukes will be employed almost immediately. And I do think Iran is going to have to do some significant damage to probably Israeli infrastructure to really send a message. Yeah, I feel that we are on the brink of not only a regional war here, but it's just going to turn into a global war, especially if the nuclear threshold is reached or anything like that. I would probably go and buy some gas, guys, because if there's a regional war, odds are, the oil fields in all of these different regions are probably going to be struck. There's going to be disruptions in potentially the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea. Things could get very, very, very interesting very, very quick here. So, yeah, go ahead and get in some questions, guys. Tell me how wrong I am. But yeah, I think we're going to see it. I don't think it's going to be a big warning either. I think that Iran is going to just launch missiles and drones. I think that Israel is going to get absolutely pelted from every single direction, from in Syria, from in Iraq, from Iran, potentially from Yemen, and then also the big player in this, because Iran's abilities are limited to just long-range missiles, so there is a limited amount of damage. But Hezbollah in the north is going to be a key instrument in winning this war for Iran if Iran can win the war. Not saying they can, but the way that I see Iran winning the war is just outlasting Israel. Let Israel come into southern Lebanon. Let them get bogged down in a serious engagement that they're not ready for because they weren't ready in Gaza. They're already attrited. They're a majority reserve army. Their economy is tired. Their body politic is divided. Israel, much like Ukraine, is just smoldering from within right now. You had the right was going in and trying to break some of the soldiers of the IDF out of prison after they had been accused of raping a Palestinian who conducted October 7th stuff. So there's this swell of emotion. Everybody's scared. Nobody knows who's right, who's going to be the right leader. Some of the people like Netanyahu, some of them want him out. Some of them want him in jail. You have a portion of the population who is Hasidic Jew, who does not approve of the war and the foreign policy of the Bibi administration. So there's a lot at play, guys. And the best thing that Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, Iraq, all of the Hezbollahs in those areas, not Syria like the Assad aspect, but the militias, the Iranian militias in these regions, the best thing they can do is force the Israelis to come into Lebanon, then do incredible infrastructure damage to the entire north of Israel and force all of those people into a very, very small area and make basically the domestic situation so impossible for Israelis that either the government has to come to some sort of peace deal, kind of like they did in 2006 in southern Lebanon, or loses, which would mean probably nukes. So it's a very, very tense situation. It's why we don't want wars, because it's not going to end positively for anybody. All right, guys. Go ahead and get some questions in. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Come on. Kalibrated. Do you think that the localized Pashani breakthrough will be significantly expanded in the near future? So what AMK is talking about right here is up in the Kharkov region. We have this Pashani breakthrough. I do think it's going to be expanded upon. I think it's incredibly valuable for the Russians to put an immense amount of pressure on this road right here and just cut logistics south. Once logistics are cut south and they have to come up through the north, the progress in places like Stelamakivka and down here, sort of on this side of the Zhibyets River, this sort of on this side of the Zhibyets River right here is going to become much, much more difficult for the Ukrainians once this is cut. As well as just holding these more extent areas of this bridgehead. I really don't know why the Ukrainians are still here. This is crazy. The amount of manpower that's being wasted in this area, holding this bridgehead for practically no reason when they could set up a very, very strong defensive line along the Oskal. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but again, it's Ukraine's political situation that they're under where they can't back out. But, I mean, look how close we are, at least on my map. Look how close the Russians are to the line, right? The Russians are so close, and the Ukrainians, like, say you're defending, and your operational zone is, what, a mile from the river? 3 miles, sorry. Sometimes the scale on this map is a little weird. 3 miles. So everything in here is in FPV range. Everything in here is in mortar range. Everything is in Lancet range. It's just the Ukrainian operating space to be defensively maneuverable is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So yes, I do believe the Russians are going to heavily expand in this area because this is one of the only areas they've actually seen significant success, unlike up here in Sinkivka where, nothing's really happening. Nukes won't be used. That would mean the end of Israel. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, buddy, but if the nukes are getting used, that is the end of Israel. And if the Iranians are successful and they actually have, a way of doing significant infrastructure damage to Israel, the Israeli nuclear doctrine will be triggered. Like, you guys act like nukes are just like I'm not a big nuke guy. I think nukes are the last case scenario, but countries have them for a reason. And Israel is a very delicate, weak country in its current position in the Middle East. It's why they want to expand, so that they're not as isolated and weak as they are up against the sea, down in the south. So they have the U.S., they have the backing. I'm not saying that Israel is going to be destroyed or pushed into the sea or anything, but I'm just saying if you have enough strikes that are successful and the Israeli state is getting to a point where it can't handle the the number of drones hitting transformers. Say the Iranians launch a couple thousand drones in this next salvo. They get everything ready. They do one massive attack, and they just target every single transformer in Israel. There's not that many, right? Massive transformers, the big ones, the distribution transformers. There's not that many. Imagine if they hit every oil storage facility in Israel. There's not that many. Right? Israel's not a big place. It is not a big economy. It does not have a lot of people. And if Israel is struck in a way that makes them feel as though their statehood and their future is threatened, there's no point in not using nukes, especially if it can win you a war. It's a tool, guys. It's a tool like any other tool, and it's why it's a good reason to get rid of them. So Israel uses tax, so Russia uses nukes too. Really? No, because Russia's winning. You only use a nuke when the cards are down and you have no options. You don't use a nuke just because somebody else used one. I mean, you could, I guess, but that's not going to look good. I mean, there's still global trade. A couple of attacks soon. Just be living in an age where a nuke has just been used. It doesn't necessarily mean global thermal nuclear wars, just because nuclear weapons are used against Iran, and then say Iran maybe has some nukes that we don't know about technically. Being a regime surviving and a state surviving, especially with the United States bearing down on you, the best thing you can do is acquire nukes. That's what North Korea did, and North Korea is now 20, 30-year slump. So, yeah, I think Iran has nukes. I don't know why they wouldn't change. It could just be kept to a regional Middle Eastern nuclear exchange. And by the way, if that started, which I am still convinced that we are in the Fallout universe and we're about to go through the transformation. I know we didn't stop progressing in the 1950s, but I think we're going to cross that line, and then we're going to have resource wars, and then eventually in 2077. It's my favorite theory. Did something happen? My mic? Oh no. Is it fixed? Okay, good. Sorry, guys. I didn't even know it was happening. I wasn't scrolled down on the chat. Rip. Sorry. I don't know what happened. All right. I have a few articles that I wanted to show you guys. So we're going to just pop over to those, and I'll just talk about those real quick. So this was the first news outlet. Bloomberg reported it first. So I'm just going to read theirs. Ukraine receives first F-16 fighter jets after long wait. Oh, we can't read it because I forgot Bloomberg is Bloomberg. So, oops, my bad, guys. I read it earlier. We'll talk about a different one. Anyway, basically, the article is just talking about how Ukraine has gotten some F-16s, but they're probably very limited in number, and they probably have very limited pilots, like we've been talking about the entire time. I think it was, 6 pilots are ready to go from the European training program. So they probably have at most 12 F-16s and 12 F-16 pilots, right? Or full crews. Other article that I was going to show you. Sorry. Just mainstream media now is talking about the Pokrovsk front, so I thought it was kind of interesting and worth talking about. Russia inches towards the strategic supply route in Ukraine's east. Kiev, July 29th. Russian forces are focusing their heaviest assaults near Ukraine's strategic eastern city of Pokrovsk. Kiev said on Monday as Moscow hits. Drum roll, please. Full scale. Is it really going again? Oh no. I don't know why. Let's see. Hello, 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 hello. Can you guys hear me? Is it breaking up? This is always the most. Why? Sometimes I like to wave my mic around. Still glitchy, huh? Let's see. I'll be right back, guys. Let me put on some music for you real fast. The old feeding the ducks. Is it better now? Please tell me if it's better. Oh, it's the is it so it's the whole stream? I don't know what's happening. My internet's fine. Okay. Okay. Sorry guys. My internet is perfectly fine. Yep. It's good. So it's not me. It's something. All right. Well, I'll answer this last question. Is it? It's good now. Uh, Greetings from Serbian Kosovo. It helps immensely. Uh, it's slightly glitching. It's not on. That again. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Tomorrow, hopefully, I can get this figured out. But be safe. Have a good week, Jim, earlier because I have stuff to do tonight. So I'll get that uploaded either today or tomorrow soon. One by myself and one by. Be safe. Take care. Love y'all.